Hey everyone, really warm welcome back. So a few times I've been asked to video some of the little intricacies of how you get the seats out the back of these multivans. So that's what today's about, how to get the middle row out and the back row all in one video. So if you own one of these things with this style of sliding row seats, that's the T5, the T6 or the T6.1. If you own the new multivan, the seats are different, but the 5, 6 and 6.1 are using this rail system. So here we go. So just a little context here, when we bought this T6 Caravelle, we imagined that we'd mainly just use the 3-seater rear bench, but actually when it turned up, the boys have been really favouring these two individual middle row armchairs. So before we can start any rear kitchen unit building, I wanted to experiment with taking out the rear bench seat and seeing if we really needed that and how we use the space before we got into the point of no return in terms of building a rear kitchen for the boot. But in order to take out the rear bench, we've also got to take out this middle row of seats, and so that's how come I have this footage, and we've got to get this table out here from the centre as well. So this can then form a video about how to remove the seats in the T5, I guess the 5.1, the 6 or the 6.1. And it's a very, very heavy and awkward job. Certainly something that you don't want to be tackling on your own, even if you are an enormous hulk of a person. This is not something to do on your own. It's a very heavy and awkward job. The T7, or the new multivan, I'm not quite sure what they're calling it yet, because at the moment of recording, it's only just been launched a couple of months ago. So that looks so much better because it's got individual click fit seats, and it looks much more practical in terms of the flexibility of the seating, because that's where these multivans really score, and that's in flexibility. However, having said that, there are lots of other things I don't like about the 2022 multivan, but that's not what this video is about, so let's get on with moving these seats. You'll see that I use quite a lot of carpet in here, and that's because these aluminium rail covers are really quite delicate. They scratch and dent super easily. These plastic caps have a push button tab to come loose. You can use just a flathead screwdriver gently, or actually the car key fits in here, and I think some people recommend using the car key. Obviously be careful not to push it too far so as not to bend it. And you can get your finger in if you've got small fingers, but it can be a bit painful, so probably best not to do that. Anyway, then push the aluminium rail covers towards the front, and then they just lift out. The first couple of times it can feel a bit strange because it feels a little brittle and a little high pitch when they move, but that is correct. It's just because of the noise of the different metals on each other. It is pretty obvious where they go back in, but it's even easier to just put them aside easily in the correct order, so you don't have to think about that when it comes back to reassembling everything. Then it's headrests off of these middle row seats and the armchairy things. Slide the seat forward. Make sure you take the headrest off first, or it won't fit against the front seats, even if they're pushed quite far forward. So just slide them in the normal way using the bar underneath the seat, and you'll need to make sure they're really far forward, and then they just lift out because they have these feet underneath them that fit in the slots in the rails, and that just lines up with the holes, so you can lift the seat out as soon as it's far enough forward in the correct place. Now make sure they're folded flat, that makes the lifting out a bit easier. There's that fold on there. See? The centre table can be a bit trickier to line up. The holes are there, so where are the feet? And then once the individual chairs and the table are out, you can pull the positioning strap of the three-seater bench. So that's the strap underneath rather than the lever that you use to fold it. You will have already folded it using the lever that's slightly higher on the seat. So slide that all the way towards the front, and you can see it's exactly the same principle. So the feet line up with the slots that are now available in the rails that are usually covered by the aluminium cover pieces. I'll show you a close-up of the wheels that each seat actually runs along in a minute. I guess when I say feet, that's probably the wrong names. So there are these strips of really serious steel that go under the rail system, and so they lock the chair into position in the rail, so there's no chance of anything moving if you have to stop suddenly, etc. So these are super safe, and the seats, when they're clipped in, feel absolutely secure. But of course they weigh an absolute ton. Well, obviously not a ton, but certainly are incredibly heavy. I don't think this bench seat is much shy of 100 kilos actually. The manual says 90 kilos, but then this is the fake leather version and Alcantara, which I'm sure is much heavier than the normal fabric. So I'm sure the 90 kilos in the manual refers to the normal fabric rather than this slightly heavier gauge. Luckily, we've got a trolley on hand, otherwise this would be a complete nightmare. So with a trolley and a couple of teens, we're good to go, because we've only got a few steps to go upwards. Otherwise, it's really, really difficult. I can't stress that enough, given the weight and the awkwardness of the thing. And there are very few places to put your hands to get a good handhold for carrying the thing. And of course, the weight is slightly off-center balanced, and of course the back of the seat is folded down over the top, and it doesn't lock into position, so that bit's a bit wiggly as well. You can't just lift it from the top bit. So as well as needing to be Jeff Capes to lift the thing, is also blooming difficult, as I said, to find where to put your hands. And the places where it would be obvious to put your hands, there's edges of plastic which can be quite sharp and not very finger friendly, so be really careful thinking about where to pick it up, and obviously everybody working as a team to try and lift the thing together. So as promised, here's a close-up of the usual wheels. So these wheels sit on the rails, so they sit on top of those aluminium bars, and then the locking mechanism is inside the rail itself, so underneath all of that assemblage of steel and aluminium and so on. And luckily our trolley is just big enough, otherwise this could be a bit of a problem. So once all the seats are out, there's an absolutely cavernous space left behind, 240 centimeters by 120. What's that, 8 foot by 4 foot for everybody who hasn't yet converted to metric. So possibly frustrating that it's just a tiny bit too small for a full sheet of ply, which is slightly annoying. I suppose this is the Multivan version though, not the van version, so normal people don't carry full sheets of ply around in their Multivan. Anyway, here's a close-up of the rails themselves. So doubles in the centre and singles out at the edges. As I said at the beginning of the video, we did this because we're going to experiment with just the 2 captain's chairs. They're called captain's chairs because they rotate as well as recline and have arms. So very luxurious for these backseat passengers. So it was a simple matter of just placing them back in the rails in the exact reverse of removing them. So lining the feet up through the slots and then sliding them backwards, and then popping the aluminium covers over. Alrighty, so to get these aluminium cover strips in, we need to line up the vertical piece of that aluminium. So you saw it look like a T shape, didn't you? A T cross section. And there are some spring steel clips in the black rail that's embedded in the floor all the time. And they're not always obvious from the top, certainly not if you're trying to do it one-handed with the camera in the other hand. Sorry if there's any shaking going on in this footage. So yeah, I missed that front one. So just get them lined up, and then you push down gently and they just clip into place because there are slots drilled in the vertical bit of the aluminium T shape. So on the outside edges, there's just 2 of these to go in, and the spring steel, can you see that slot there? So the spring steel is between the rail and the outside edge. So just line them up and push them down. Sometimes it goes first time, sometimes it doesn't. And then the black thick ABS plastic bit that goes on the end is handed, so you can see one end has a very big I guess flap, latchy bit, and that goes towards the front. So the big bit towards the front, and then the more obviously sprung clippy end towards the back of the van. And again, just push them in gently and push them down until they're flat. And then it's exactly the same principle on the double rail in the middle. Oh, you can see these springy bits much better here, can't you? That's it. So that's the big wide double rail for the center. So you can see the vertical bit goes on the side where the spring steel is. Much easier to line up in the middle here, so just pop it on, press it down. She says it's much easier to line up and then gets it wrong, of course. Just give that a wiggle to make sure that centre bit lines up. There we go. And then the outside edges are the same. So then the rubbers attached to the aluminium just meet perfectly in the middle and hopefully keep the inside of the rails clean, which cuts down on trying to open everything up and get the vacuum out to make sure the chairs run smoothly. Now this one is much more obvious, which is the back and which is the front, because it's shaped towards the front seats and then the spring edge on the back there. So nice and easy. And it's exactly the same for the other rails, of course, just another double and another single. So thanks for tuning in. Do the thumbs up thing. I must stop rambling, and so that's the end. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye for now. See ya.